Hello there and welcome. I'm Lisa Leight. I am VP Marketing here at Convoso, and once again we are honored to have the TCPA czar himself, Eric Troutman of the Troutman firm. Eric, thanks for joining us again today.
Absolutely, Lisa, and you look radiant as always. Great work.
Thank you, thank you. I thought you were commenting on my alma mater shirt, which I wore for your benefit.
All right, now luckily no one can see that horrible, horrible name down there, although everyone can make out, I think, a little Oski the bear.
There he is, Oski. Oh, gosh. Well, we are here to talk about another Pac-12 state, Washington. And these states, first it was Florida, and these states, they just keep coming out with their own mini TCPA laws. Tell us about what came down from the state of Washington.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty awful the way the states are proliferating, and I think the big thing to take away from Washington, the new law isn't as dire, say, as Florida or Oklahoma, but it's just another example of how the patchwork just isn't lining up. All right, so check this out. Under federal law, right, we know that you have to, if you're doing a pre-recorded call, a marketing call, you have to identify yourself within 2 seconds of the called party picking up, right? Under the new Washington law, for a non-pre-recorded call, you have to identify yourself within 30 seconds of the start of the call, which is kind of weird because I wonder, like, what are you doing for those 30 seconds before you identify who you are?
Can I ask you a question? What do they mean by identify? Can it just be, hey, I'm Lisa, or do you have to give the full company name? What do they mean by identify?
So you definitely need to have the full company name. Unlike other states, like in Virginia, where you have to actually name, hi, I'm Eric Troutman, the Washington law doesn't seem to require you to identify yourself by first and last name, although, hey, that might be best practice. Again, different state laws, right, with these different standards. And they also have a couple of other requirements, which are interesting. One, you have to terminate the call within 10 seconds of being asked to stop calling, which again is pretty interesting because, I guess it tells you that you can't do a rebuttal, right? There's no opportunity for you to try to convince somebody they should stay on the line, or to try to convince them or understand, really, what do you mean when you say stop calling? For instance, in the servicing context, many times, if somebody says, don't call me anymore, you want to kind of try to figure out, well, do you mean on just this account, about this purpose, to this number? Like, what do you mean? There's kind of like a waterfall you have to go through. Under the new Washington law, you got 10 seconds, right? You might get one more question in there, but mostly it's just supposed to be, well, thank you very much, have a nice day. So I think that's kind of an interesting change. To me, the biggest change, though, it's really kind of a weird rule. Under the TCPA, right, somebody has to give you a very clear instruction that they want calls to stop in order to effectuate a revocation or a DNC request, right? The language that the courts look at is whether or not it was clearly conveyed. Under the Washington law, all they have to do is give you an indication that they don't want the calls anymore, and that is a revocation. So what's an indication? Well, I'm not really sure I really want to hear from you guys anymore. I don't know that I'm interested in this. I mean, you really have to have your creative hats on when you start trying to call into Washington now, because any indication that the consumer would like the call to stop, you got 10 seconds to stop the call, say bye-bye, and send them off. One last rule that I think is interesting in Washington, again, under the federal rules, of course, you've got to honor a DNC request for 5 years. In Washington, I don't even know what to make of this, you only have to honor that request for 1 year, right? So, and you have to tell the consumer when they give you that indication that they don't want to hear from you anymore, probably during your 10 seconds that you have, that we're going to stop calling you for 1 year. Again, it's just like one of these additional really difficult, how do you operationalize and implement rules on the one hand at the federal level that require 5 years, and then 1 year in Washington. Presumably you're just going to treat everything under the 5-year rule, but it's just a strange thing because technically your agents have to tell that consumer 1 year, even if you're going to honor it for 5 years. It's just the most bizarre thing.
Huh. Are there any exceptions?
There are some exceptions. There are a number. Well, first of all, This only applies to marketing calls, which is something that should be kept in mind. You're also going to be talking about exceptions are going to include nonprofit companies, and anytime the call was initiated by the called party originally. So for instance, if there's an inquiry, right, I make an inquiry to your company, and then you call back, that's going to be an exception to at least some pieces of this, but it's a little unclear, right? Does that mean that if I make an inquiry to you, you call me back, and then I say don't call me anymore, that this entire statute doesn't apply because I made the initial inquiry? The answer might be yes. Of course, under federal law, the DNC request is going to trump any previous inquiry. So again, it's just another one of those little gray areas where you're going to kind of scratch your head. But again, you're going to want to use, and this is true no matter what state you're in, the best practice is always to be conservative, and whatever the highest standard is, if it's the federal law, or if it's the state law where you're in, you're going to want to apply whatever that highest standard is. And I know a number of my clients look around and they say, okay, what is the most restrictive standard in the country, right? Be that at the state or federal level, and I'm just going to abide by that across the entire nation so that I know I'm safe.
Right. And as the landscape changes, as more states come out with, their own different laws, there may be the most stringent ones that you're going to have to collate from, up to 50 states.
Yeah, I mean, you just have to pay attention. I mean, these things are popping up everywhere. Obviously, at TCPAWorld.com, I'm doing everything I can to keep track of these things as they first get introduced, and then eventually as they become law, and try to give everyone warning, hey, this is going to happen, this is going to happen. But, not even the czar can be everywhere at once. So.
And when did this law go into effect?
I believe June 9.
June 9th, so it just happened.
5 days ago, it has become effective. And of course, Oklahoma, that big rule, which is a copycat of the Florida Mini-TCPA, goes into effect November 1st. So make sure you have that calendar.
All right. Well, let's do a future call, and we'll get your thoughts on Oklahoma. But I thank you for being with us today.
Absolutely, Lisa. Thank you so much for having me.